I agree. And in a lot of ways, regardless of how each individual approaches this material, somewhere down the road, I think it does lead us all to the same place.
Mm.
And hopefully that's going to be a good place.
Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying? That no matter what your take is, as different as everybody's takes are going to be, that ultimately the material and the end result is all taking us to a place where we're all connected at the end. We may not totally be connected now, but at some point we will be somewhere down the road.
Mm. No,
And that's important.
Absolutely, I see what you mean, and I agree. And again, it's just something that we can see maybe a hint of, way off in the horizon, as it were. And this is just about, discovering. This is the first initial small steps, if you will, of discovering how everything fits together and how the the schematics or the properties or even the code of life and existence in a weird kind of way is connected. And science is doing their part on their end, right? And we're doing some other interesting aspect to this when we're researching the media, news events, things that are happening in the world, and the names and place and the interconnectedness of these things. And it's very much a part of the same puzzle, if you will, but we might not have the perspective to see all that right now. So I think you're right, absolutely. And if we go back, Todd, quickly again here to the moon aspect and the Sirius aspect, I don't know if there's much more to mention on it. I guess there is. There always is, of course. But this is something that you've been following, and I think that the motifs of the moon and even, I guess, Sirius is something that you are constantly following up on and keeping in the back of your head, as it were. Is there anything more you can say about it or want to say about it before we move on and touch upon something else here?
Well, the way this stuff works for me is that once one of these themes, like I was talking about before, like 2 years ago, I started using the trident to express some of these ideas. And now here it is, like almost 2 years later, and that's become even more dominant in my work in a lot of ways. I think probably the same thing is going to hold true with the moon research and the Sirius material.
Mm-hmm.
That these are now becoming like somewhat established signifiers, if you will. We're seeing the moon stuff is still just continuing to go on. You can't not open up a newspaper or read a news article about Barack Obama these days without references to his honeymoon in the White House being over.
Right.
It's little subtle things like that.
Yeah.
Then the other day, he basically it was scheduled, but he basically snuck out of the White House. He was having all these troubles with the confirmation of his cabinet posts to an elementary school in Washington, D.C. And he goes and, not unlike Bush's reading of the goat story on the day of 9/11,
mm-hmm.
we find Barack Obama reading a book called Moon Over Star to a group of elementary school students. And he's fascinated with the moon. He's fascinated with JFK, who's the man who swore he was going to put us on the moon, and then Abe Lincoln, and there's all these connections that he himself seems obsessed with, and then the media becomes even almost more obsessed with it in a way that it feeds into their reporting on him, whether they even fully realize it or not. Like the referring to the honeymoon being over, and little things like that they may not even be conscious that it's just stacking up. All this like material surrounding him just keeps getting stacked up.
Yeah.
And again, Christopher Knowles has really done an amazing job following the stuff around Barack Obama specifically.
Yes.
But those couple of things came up like last week or so that I just kept noticing, and I know that Christopher picked up on it just as quickly. And that's another thing with this research is that once one of these stories breaks, there's so many people examining this stuff now that it happens so fast.
Yeah.
It's going to get posted. Somebody's going to start picking up on it almost immediately. And so really kind of the best we can do is play off of each other and try to fill the holes and try to keep building a foundation of this material. And in a way, when I think about keeping up with all the information as it's coming from us, so many different sources, that I start to think about things like trying to somehow catalog, or I try to put a number of links to anyone that's writing about the same topic as I am at one time, and trying to like make sure that if you're reading my article, I give you as many other links as I possibly can to the other people that are writing about it at the exact same time.
Right, yeah.
But then as quickly as these things come, they go quickly too.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of times, like, it's hard for me to even come on and talk about, right, even now, all the stuff that happened to Mumbai, even though I wrote about it. Because it moved so fast that once you've processed the information and written about it, not to say that it's gone from your consciousness, but you have to move on so quickly to the next thing, excuse me, that you can start to lose bits and pieces of it. Yes, it's written down on my blog, digitally, but I'd like to see a compendium almost of the information from everybody that's working on it simultaneously. That's something that I think about. Not quite sure how to go about it.
Yeah.
But I think that for us, people that are writing about it and covering it, plus for people that want to be able to find all of it in one place, I think would be a great idea. And that's just kind of things that I kick around.
No, I know what you mean. I think that also the idea that it is very difficult to keep every single detail on track in your brain, as it were, and an advantage with it now is that you can keep like you're doing, and what really actually a blog is, it is like an online journal, right, where you can make those types of note, put down the basic and most important details that one can find, and then there will be up there for people to search and discover and continue their research for themselves. And I think that is the best way of go about it, because really on one level, to carry around all those details would be on one level kind of useless information in a way. It's just enough with the fact that you know what has happened, you know the basic story, the basic outline of something, and can quickly drag that up when something similar happens, right? Okay, this resonates with that over there, so let me go back and check the details on that and to verify and see what how these correlate in a way. And I think that's a natural process, actually. Yeah,
and that's how this form of writing or research really works.
Yeah.
Something will click. Reading some, oftentimes fairly ambiguous news story, and you come across something, and you go, wait a minute, I came across that, or something that refers to that, or symbolizes that somewhere else, in the recent past.
Mm-hmm.
And quickly, when you make that connection, then it opens the doors usually to 3 or 4 other things.
Absolutely.
That end up making that event or that story that much more symbolic.
Yeah. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I think that's also that's the nature of how as you say, the research is being done. It needs to be, filtered through all the previous information, and in that sense, and again, that's why I think it's very much an intuitive process. Actually, it's more about you recall something. It's something in the information, the article, whatever, that seems to resonate with you, and that is what you probably pick up on, and then just go into the details of it, and then you'll discover it. There it is.
It's fascinating. It certainly can become addictive too, because like I said, it's like opening up a big can of worms. Mm-hmm. When you start to look, the connections that are there are staggering. And really, at some level, that is probably just showing us how we are all connected.
Yeah.
I think at some level that is what it's telling us, but at other levels, I think it's also telling us other things as well.
Let's see here. We have about 10 minutes or so left, and I'd like to ask you a little bit on where you'd like to go in the last portion of our program. We could either maybe talk a little bit more about you mentioned in the first segment that you had a personal kind of UFO experience. Either we can talk a little bit about that if you're up for it, or we can possibly move on and talk about the Dark Knight, the Joker theme that I know that you've been, as with many else as well, have been following very closely. So there's a number of ways where we can go here. What would you like to talk about here in the last portion, Todd?
Well, as much as my past experience is interesting to me, it's nothing significant enough to bother your listeners with, I don't think.
Okay.
So, I think, we can certainly discuss the Dark Knight situation. I mean, that story just continues on and on and on, and it's an amazing one. That you could do multiple shows
on that alone,
just on that one topic.
Give us just a brief a background from your perspective of what you found fascinating and how it began for you, and we can see where we end up with that.
Well, let's see. I guess obviously with Heath Ledger's passing, that just triggered a bunch of people to start looking at what may have happened there. I don't think that anyone really wanted to believe that he killed himself or, would take his own life. He, a young, very popular actor. But there was just so much information swirling in relation to his role as the Joker that I don't think anybody could just look at it on the surface level. And so